told I have about 5 minutes. So I'm going to talk about myself for 4 and then order malt for 1. But seriously, I'm a virtual tenant here. I've been a New Albany resident for a number of years. I'm very pleased at how successful the Innovate New Albany has been and incubators and community spaces like this. I grew up in Granville, went to Columbus Academy. I'm 7th generation Ohioan. 2 generations before my family moved to Ohio, had a relative named Captain James Hook, who fought in the Revolutionary War and moved to Pennsylvania shortly after and was the first sheriff of Greene County, Pennsylvania, and was part of the Whiskey Rebellion. So I realized that after starting this business that I have some whiskey in my blood. So I went to Harvard and was a biological anthropology major and spent some time in Kenya doing some archaeology things and ecology tours, and did my pre-meds and naturally went and worked at Morgan Stanley for a couple of years and started a business with my older brother when I was 25 back in 1999. That was software, B2B software, supply chain business process automation. I ended up having investment from very big like Cisco, McDonald's, Cargill, Tyson, Axel, KKR. So I cut my teeth working in starting and launching with my brother a venture-backed company that had some success, and fell in love with studying cultures, traveling, and solving problems and supply chains and getting into the entrepreneurial spirit. So fast forward to about 6-7 years ago, I met a distiller in town, Ryan Lang, who's my partner in this venture, the distiller and co-founder of Middle West Spirits, which makes OYO brand and Middle West brand. And he was sharing with me that he could get his raw material, his corn, his wheat, his rye, locally from a farmer, posted price, high quality, non-GMO. And then he showed me a bag of malt. To make single malt whiskey, you need malted barley. And it said UK. It was from England. And I was like, well, why would you have to go to England to get that? We don't grow here. And that started a journey of realizing that there's a huge opportunity here. And it's not just in distilling, it's even a bigger opportunity in brewing, in the brewing world. So in 1900, there were over 4,000 breweries in the Americas. And Cincinnati was deemed the beer capital of the world. And to make malt out of barley, you have to have a facility that steeps it until it germinates, then you put it in a germinating vessel, and then you put it in a kiln and you basically roast it. And that's how you make malt. Malt doesn't just get plucked out of the field. There's a process. And 4 of the largest barley malting plants in all of the Americas in 1900 were in Ohio. And there's a heat map that I could share later during Q&A maybe, that shows where barley was produced in the farms in the 1860s and where it's produced in the farms now. And it is fascinating. So what happened was we had Prohibition, we had a couple of major world wars, and we found that corn and soybeans are great crops to grow here, very hard to grow in Europe and other places. So we're now an export crop driven economy. So between those things, all of the growth of barley moved to areas where it's harder to grow corn and soybeans. We also went from over 4,000 breweries down to fewer than 50. So in 1978, we had fewer than 50 breweries, and you could probably, name most of them if you sat around a table and really thought about it. And then most of those brands are still quite big. Now we have over 7,000 breweries, and not surprisingly, the heat map of where the craft beer is made starts within 300 miles of here. So over half of the craft beer that's made in this continent is made within a day's drive of Columbus. Yet you have to move at least 1,000 miles to get the main raw material, the malted barley. So it seems like an obvious supply chain problem to fix. The existing players that have been working for the last 100 years in the industry are huge. They have huge malting plants making huge train car loads full of malt to go right down into the huge breweries. They're not set up to deliver custom blends of malt and smaller batches of malt to startup craft brewers. So over the last several years, partners, including Ohio State, which has one of the only winter malting barley breeders in the country, and the only one in the Big Ten, amazingly, has been working on trying to figure out what varieties of barley can grow in the winter here, so it doesn't compete with corn and soybeans. And so that was question number one. Could we find strains of barley that can grow well here? The next piece was, can they have the quality levels? If we can get the farmers to grow it, are they the quality levels that make good product, beer, whiskey, other things? And we knocked down that hurdle. And then the next question was, can we get brewers, some of the bigger brewers, to convert and actually purchase our malt? And we've solved for all of those. We have beer in the market that's being produced by barley grown by our partner farms around Ohio and Michigan and Pennsylvania and Indiana. So the next step, really, the real solution to the problem is building a plant. So our biggest challenge right now is to build a plant that has the size and automation and sophistication that it can compete on quality, consistency, and price with the big competitors. So that's not a small task. To build the size of malt plant, it's about a 60,000 ton plant, which would lead to about 600 million pints of beer being produced at the end of the day. So about a $2 billion economic impact. A lot of people employed at the farm, employed at the breweries, a lot of reshoring, I would say, of the production of the raw material. But to have a startup that needs to raise tens of millions of dollars to get off the ground, I'd say that's the biggest challenge we've faced, and we've hit it head on, and it's a community. So we have our partners, equity investor partners, our farmers, brewers, and we have international foreign direct investment, millions of dollars from strategic partners that have been in this industry for over 150 years. So my 5 minutes is probably up, but we're enjoying the experience. We're building a malting plant. In the meantime, we're growing and serving malt that we have a third party making for us to top brewers around the region, and the quality and everything has been remarkable. So we're having a blast. Thanks. Trying to squeeze in 5 minutes is a good challenge.
Yeah, good. So yeah,
I don't know how many minutes that was.
Kick it off. We have dialogue and questions now.
Can I try to get to the
absolutely.
the slide? How do I do that?
Maybe just down.
Sit down.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So Q&A.
You're currently in the midst of raising capital, or have you already raised the capital and are now proceeding with the plan?
Yeah, we've raised capital, and we're working on some debt right now with some banks, and we're in an opportunity zone. So we are raising an opportunity zone fund to cover some of that expense to build. Our site will have the malting plant, and it will have an 80,000 square foot distribution center and warehouse as well. And we have a strategic partner that we're working with on our distribution.
Which one did you want?
The one that has the maps.
That's the heat map.
Got to nerd out to that.
It's probably like slide 15 or so.
Okay.
This is a good example of all the partnerships that we've created. So we've formed relationships with the Ohio Seed Improvement Association, the Ohio Corn and Wheat Growers Association, and Ohio Soybean Association. It turns out that growing winter barley reduces soil erosion by 50 to 80% and reduces phosphorus runoff by about 70 to 90%, which is pretty important. And part of the governor's mission is water quality and soil conservation. So someone asked me recently, why would you not do this? I've been told before this is a sin investment, which is interesting because we're not actually brewing or distilling. But then I countered, because actually sprouted grains is a very highly sought after health ingredient for like breads and soups and things like that, and we can produce that too, which is kind of fun. And we can do that with wheat, millet, any kind of grain. There's another one in there that has two maps. Might be the next one.
So did you
that
encounter
that one. Yeah.
Did you encounter a lot of resistance from the
Thanks.
farmers when you're trying to convince them to grow the winter barley?
You know, it's amazing that farmers have actually been super excited from day one because they grow winter wheat, and the market for winter wheat is really tough. The pricing and there haven't been a value-added for-profit winter crop that's been presented to them in at least a generation, maybe more. So they've been very excited. Their reservation is, does it work? And it takes a few years before you can get the crop insured. But the farmers have been resilient and really fantastic partners. And the foundation of that are a group of 7 seedsmen, seed producers, that came together and are investors with us, and we created a subsidiary, Malting Seed Producers. So they go out and host farmers in their regions throughout Ohio and explain how this can fit in their crop rotations. So real quick, this is 1859. You look at the heat map of where barley was produced, and I think some people after the gold rush went out here, took the seeds and started growing out there. But this is where it's produced, and now this is 2016, 2017. It's all up in the upper western plains. What's produced here isn't actually malting barley. It's for feed for equine, for the horse industry. So it's just interesting to see how the economy shift created this huge opportunity. So now this just got on the radar for the first time because we have 7,500 acres in the ground, which isn't a huge number, but considering 5 years ago there were about 100 acres of malting barley in Ohio, and it was all research. And now we'll have 15,000 acres this fall, and we're going to keep going until we get to about 100,000 acres.
So between like Cincinnati, Cleveland, and Columbus,
Yeah.
which cities have the most, I guess, robust craft brewing scenes?
Well, that's a good
and
question.
then between those three, what are the differences? Because I know Cleveland has Great Lakes, Cincinnati has
Yeah.
Rhinegeist.
Yeah.
Columbus doesn't seem to have like a major
Yeah.
competitor. So.
Columbus has some older breweries like Columbus Brewing and Barley's and Smokehouse and some of those, but yeah. I mean, Great Lakes is big. Rhinegeist has just gone gangbusters. Up in Cleveland, you have Platform and Fatheads that have been growing rapidly. You got down in Cincinnati, you also have Mad Tree, which is growing fast, and you have Taft's. And so the amazing thing is, in 2011, we had 47 breweries in Ohio, and now we have 304. So it's hard to say which city's killing it, because everybody is. And Columbus has started to really, a big thing in this region was when Brewdog planted its seed here, and it's starting to take off. But there seems to be like a new brewery within the state popping up, and they're not joking around. Some of these are like they're putting production facilities in, and they are serious about what they're doing. And we have distillers popping up too, like High Bank and a few others. And then outside of the state, Pennsylvania is the #1 state for craft beer. Michigan has one of the most dense number of breweries per person per capita. Chicago has the most breweries of any city in a metro region, and Indiana is one of the fastest growing states for craft beer. And you look at distilling, and it's quite remarkable what's going on in the distilling world too. So I'll reserve my opinion on which city is doing what better than whom. Yesterday was actually the Ohio Craft Brewers Association annual meeting at Combustion in Pickerington, and it was overfilled. There were hundreds of people there. So it is thriving. Yep.
Victor, do you have any types of tie-ins or partnerships with these other regions in the states, kind of northern area? Or are they? Has there been resistance there, where they're just seeing competition, or is it more like they're buying in and they're
In other states?
Collaborate, yeah.
Well, to have U.S. grown barley is not all that available. It's not. So most of what's produced here is produced on contract for huge breweries. So more than half of the barley that's consumed by craft brewers is imported from Canada or Europe. So we have great partnerships and relationships, and breweries, there's very little resistance or irritation that we're from Ohio. And since we're growing in adjacent states, the brewers there are pretty excited about it. We have a distribution partner that is putting our products in Champlain, New York, Asheville, Tampa, Chicago, and Dallas. So we're serving the eastern half of the U.S. with our regionally grown barley. And people down in Florida, one of the biggest breweries in Florida, is super excited because right now he's buying Canadian malt. That's the best malt he can get. So
It's odd. It seems like it's a no-brainer. So
Yeah.
it's interesting to hear all these benefits that even on the overall economy and the crops and the farmers. I mean, what's the main pushback? Is it just
it's expensive.
Stigma that
It's the capital intensity. I think that it is something that is very clear that it has somebody's going to do this and put it in there. For a startup to do this, it's very capital intensive. So I think when we tell the story about how much money we raised in equity and things like that for a first round, it'll be fairly surprising to hear how much capital individuals and families and farmers and partners have contributed into this.
So I guess that's kind of the big thing. It's the barrier to entry has been so large.
Yeah.
That, because I'm always thinking, you proof of concept, MVP, everything, but it doesn't seem you can really, it's either you got to go all in because of the quantity that you got to supply.
Right.
So, or
Yeah.
not at all.
So what we've tried to do is build a foundation and make sure that we have the farmers engaged and the cooperatives and the supply chain partners. So we've gone end to end to get all the partnerships together, and at the center is building the facility.
Okay.
So those the cost of those is not as high, but building the network that says this is viable, so this has been a 5-year process to get the troops rounded up, and now it's basically a 2-year process to get the funding together and break ground and build it.
So is this something like you can go to like Yingling and say, hey, we've got barley here now, or they've got so much contracts already and worried about it changing their formula or flavor or anything like that? I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
or is
the
it barley's barley?
bigger they are and the older they are, the more dependent they are on specific resources and contracts and recipes. But that doesn't mean that we don't have an opportunity there.
So does the barley that's grown in Ohio soil have a different flavor profile than the other regions? Is that another barrier that these brewers are facing?
Yeah, so there are a lot of characteristics. It's a winter barley. Most folks get a spring barley, so there's some slight differences between winter and spring. There are terroir sorts of ester flavors and things that are in locally grown. It's what we've spent a lot of time thinking about is what varieties. So with our partnership with Ohio State, have looked at thousands of different varieties and trialed them, and have narrowed in to a variety that is called Puffin, that is an offspring of Maris Otter, and Maris Otter is an iconic variety, UK-derived variety of barley that, like Brewing 101, you start with Maris Otter. So we've had brewers come back and say that our malt is better than what they've been using. Is imported German Pilsner malt that's some of the best in the world, and so we've had feedback that our malt actually is better than what's considered gold standard today. So haven't had anybody say it's not good, which is also encouraging.
So will this be like conventionally grown or organic, or have you even thought about that? Or
Yeah, it's
does that even
a
matter?
non-GMO crop. It's susceptible to fungus and some disease, so it has to have some applications of anti-fungus and chemicals, but no glyphosate. The things that are deemed to be harmful are not applied. We can't have certain chemicals. Brewers won't buy it if it has glyphosate and some other things. So we have a whole guide for farmers. Organic would be extremely difficult, but not impossible. So down the road, we'll probably tinker with that. But
And what about hops? Have you ever thought about entering that space?
yeah, hops is an interesting one. Hops, to establish a variety and validate that it's the right kind of variety, it costs about $15,000 an acre to set up all the vines and everything, and then it takes about 3 years for one plant to mature to really know if it's any good or not. So the cost of that is prohibitive for us. We're sticking with the barley, but we're paying close attention to what they're doing in the research with hops in Ohio and Michigan. Michigan is doing quite well with hops production, and Ohio, there are, I think, over 80 farmers in Ohio that are growing hops right now. So when they figure it out, it'll be nice. Hops are stingy, I guess, or a little more fickle and more challenging. But they look fun in the farm. Yeah.
My question is sort of twofold. Do you have conversations regularly with local farmers, and or on the other side, do you also have conversations with all these mini craft breweries?
Yeah.
Because where Steve and I are up in Delaware,
Yep.
Deco Woo, there's all kinds of craft spots up there.
Absolutely.
So I was just curious on
Yeah.
both sides of the ledger. Do you
Oh, yeah.
talk with either side?
We are constantly talking. We had at Mad Tree, we had a malt school that we collaborated with Mad Tree Brewers. It was oversold. We had craft and home brewers come into that, and we went through a whole process of how malt affects brew making, beer making, and all of that. We just had our first field day in Clarksburg at Heiser Seeds, one of our investors and partners. We spent a few hours in their barn and showed people what we were doing and talked about our malt, showed the hot steep method. Everybody tasted some beer. We had about 10 brewers bring samples of their beer that they've made with our malt, and then we took them out to the field. And Heiser has about, we took them to two 200-acre fields where the barley's about this high, and the farmer was showing them how they're doing things and how they're going to harvest. And it was the first time that these brewers have had a field day where they didn't have to fly somewhere. So it was really good. And the brewers that were there were, Market Garden from Cleveland, and Mad Tree and Rheingeist and 50 West and Warped Wing. So we had brewers from all around Ohio come to this field day. It was fantastic.
Well, that, as an addendum, that you mentioned Fathead up there in Cleveland.
Yeah.
That actually is like less than 2 miles from where I grew up.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's right off of 71 there. I literally.
And that new production facility is
Yeah, so when you
State of
mentioned
the
that
art.
one, I smiled because I literally, my parents still live like 2 miles from me.
Yeah.
So,
They make
way
good
cool.
beer too.
Thank you.
Okay,
Well, thanks for your time.
well, before you go,
Sure. Okay.
usually, we're fine with letting it drag out. Well, not drag, it's an engaging conversation, but today the room is booked for 9:30.
Yeah.
So that doesn't mean we have to leave, we can still hang out and network. But before we go, the last question we ask all of our presenters is, what can we as a community do to help you out?
I would say if you drink beer, go to your local brewer or grocer and say, what do you have with origin malt? We have cover crop. North High made cover crop ale or beer for the Ohio Farm Bureau Centennial, and it was such a hit that now it's a year round. It's a brand, and you can find it in the stores. But yeah, that's one definite thing is start looking out for where you can find products with our ingredients. And from my perspective, that's say drink beer grown here.
Drink beer,
Hashtag.
grow here. Origin Malt. Well, thanks a
Yeah.
lot. Thank you so much. All right, guys. So, one last thing. We always present
Oh, awesome. Thank you.
This is our new 2019 model.
I love it. Very cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for
Appreciate
your
it.
talk. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Thanks for having
So
me.
we'll see you guys next week, hopefully at Rev 1. And then again, the first Wednesday of every month, we'll be doing it at a new location. What's the next location, Steve? Do we know?
We're
yet?
working between the deck and cultivate.
Okay, so between Deck and Cultivate,
We're
just
scheduling.
keep in touch on the social, check out the Startup Space app, and thanks for coming out, guys.
Thanks.
Yeah, this is-